Hi, this is Noah Cantor with Advice from a Young Tradesman TV, the partner YouTube channel of the Advice from a Young Tradesman podcast. And today's video is going to be a little different. We're going to get in the weeds about how to encode your first SOP, standard operating procedure, at the simplest level. It's going to be a theory episode. But before I get into that, I want to thank the PCA, the Painting Contractors Association, for making work like this possible and underwriting this channel. They, too, care a whole lot about SOPs, and for members, they provide a lot of documents and great business assets if you are interested in doing exactly what we're talking about today. So their information is in the show notes. I highly recommend giving them a look if you are in this trade and are interested in videos like this. All right, so first we're going to start with the 30,000-foot view theory. Everything you plan on displaying to presenting to a client in terms of work, paperwork, estimates, contracts, need to have a corresponding angle on the back end. When a client sees the estimate details, they're going to get bullet points, not in the weeds, they don't care. Your process, your SOPs, that's the internal version of this. That needs to communicate to your team what they need to do to deliver what the client expects. That gets in the weeds. That's every step. That is everything that you do on this door to paint it. Next slide, price. The client doesn't care how you arrived at a price of painting one door, but you need to know how you arrived at that. And that's basic, hours spent plus materials. All these things need to equal each other. If you're overdoing this side, you're over-delivering, they don't see it, you're wasting money. Your SOPs don't deliver what they expect, you're under-delivering, and they're angry. These things need to be equal. We have this bottom category too, that doesn't necessarily need to be equal, but they need to correspond. There are certain things we do that need amendments and details in contract form. I'm going to give you an example of that later in this video. On this side, you also need to know what tools you use, what disposables you're going to go through, what inventory, and what products. So all of that needs to be very clearly listed for every single thing you do. All right, now we're going to get in the weeds a little bit and talk about exactly what you need to write down and encode while you are painting a simple door like this. So, starting with big picture choices, what does that mean? Caulking floating panels. Most people don't, but if you are in an environment like Arizona and nothing really moves that much, some people caulk panels. You need to choose, do you or don't you? I'm in the Northeast, I certainly don't. If you're doing one side of a door, the interior side, does this count as well? You need to choose that because that's going to affect the front end and the back end. This is the simplest example possible. The more complicated things, the more choices that you need to make like this. And it's important to make it and stick to it unless you have a reason otherwise. SOPs. These are all of your internal steps that if you had an employee training with you, they would need to know in order to produce a well-painted door. That is everything from you walk in, you say, oh, there's a little dirt on that. We're going to wet clean it first. Oftentimes there's that hinge powder. We're going to clean that. Once that's done, maybe we sand it. When do you drop cloth? Each one of these things needs to be decided as if you were training someone who has no idea what they're doing. Write these all down. Just scribble them down. Products and disposables. Pick a paint and stick to it unless you have a reason to change. Disposables. Some people, for a door like this, might take a mini roller and use that to apply really evenly and fast. If you do that, then mini rollers are part of your disposable inventory, which is another category that you need to be adding to for everything you do, because you're going to need to re-up on that stuff. And if you want a video on that, I have an interior painting organizational video where I go into how I store all this stuff that I've decided on like this, as well as how I keep track of my inventory. Moving on. How long does it take you? How long it takes you, the solo or small owner that's really good and really fast, is going to be different than how long it's going to take a fresh employee or someone who's in the first 6 months. So if you're pricing for yourself, it's a little easier. If you were pricing for someone else, you might need to add a little time and anticipate plus 20, 30, 40% at first. And also 1 or 2 coats. Some doors just need a freshen up coat. Some doors need 2, some doors need primer and 2 top coats, so have different price ranges for that. Lastly, tools. Like I said, you're gonna walk in, say this door's filthy, you're gonna need a cleaning kit, maybe some simple green, a sponge, a bucket of water, something like that. You're gonna need sanding blocks or machine sanding capabilities, drop cloths. Every single thing you use that isn't a disposable needs to be listed so that you know you need to hang on to it and keep it organized. At that point, you have everything on your business end listed in these categories. Now it's time to translate it into what the client sees. The thing they care about most is price. And again, this is kind of an extreme example. It's one door, but they need to know how much it is. You need to know how much it is. So if you're doing an interior estimate with 13 of them, you can plug 13 into whatever estimating software you're using. I'll show you how I do it on Estimate Rocket later, and it generates a number. You're also going to want to put some basic info. Does this count for 1 or 2 coats? Some people like to see that you're going to clean it and sand it. Some clients do need to know, I've had this crop up a few times, which sides are included, which of the edges are included with interior versus exterior. That's a useful thing just to get in there, so it's written down somewhere. And then contract details, kind of overkill for a simple door repaint, but there are the bigger things we do, the more complicated things, kitchen refinishing, decks, exteriors, where there are some things you need to establish on this front. I will show you a very simple interior case later in this video as well. So that is the thought experiment, everything you need to write down for a simple door repaint in the categories that I like to use, the groupings that help me stay organized. So let's go over to the laptop. I'll show you how I enter all this information into Estimate Rocket and it translates to a bid. All right, and I promise to show a tiny little interior detail that should make it into contracts, at least in my opinion. Blind hangers, especially the little plastic ones that always break when you look at them the wrong way. That, in my opinion, needs to be established to a client in contract form for interior painting, whether or not they take it down, you take it down. If you take it down and you look at it the wrong way and it cracks, do you have to drive all over town finding a new one? I've done that a few times, and now it's in my contracts that I'm not liable for any of that. So this is a little example where I do think it's worth putting a little contract detail in for interior work, but interior work, pretty straightforward otherwise. All right, so now we are in Estimate Rocket. This is my chosen platform for storing a lot of my data. I don't personally use this to store my SOPs and those internal documents, but just for the sake of keeping on one screen, I wrote everything down here that is more of the process-facing employees, and everything up here is what is actually shown on the estimate. I'll show you what that looks like in a bit. Let's just take it down the line. You wrote out the SOPs. These are all the steps that you personally find it valuable to do in your market based on what kind of business you want to run. And, you know, this isn't exhaustive, but we're all going to do some version of removing or backing off hardware. We're going to store it so it doesn't get lost. We're going to clean dirt and handprints off. There's a lot of smudges or grease. Maybe we're using Simple Green. That's what I like to do for basic interior cleaning. After that is done, I don't like to sand when there's a ton of gunk on there. I like to get the gunk off and then sand. So, wait a couple minutes for it to dry, come back with, fine sponge or maybe machine sanding with the RTS. And then you got a little sanding dust, go over it one more time with a clean tack cloth, and now you're ready to paint. You're gonna need to go over the order of operations, doing a panel door, panels, rail styles, all of that. And, we're listing all this out. This is stuff, there is side-by-side teaching here, but on the employee-facing one, I do like to have more detail here. You're going to need to specify which edge to paint with each side as well. What do the clients care about? They want to know prep includes cleaning and sanding, 2 coats of Scuff X satin, their chosen sheen or color, brushed. Bam, easy. We're going to call this 6-panel commercial door. This is just how I categorize it in the system. Again, Estimate Rocket has awesome videos on how to do all this. I'm not going to get into the internal workings of it. Another thing that you are cataloging, like I said, is you go through all this is what tools you are using, sanders, disposables like sponges and tack cloths, things you need every time you do this. Start a Google Doc, start a sheet, somehow categorize and list everything as you go, as you make this. All right, and now last thing is price. If you're watching this, if you're the owner operator, you are going to be the fastest one in your company, the most proficient one in your company. You also need to think about pricing as it pertains to a relatively fresh employee if you are thinking about taking on those. So they're going to be at least 25-30% slower than you for a decent amount of time. And maybe you don't want to lose your shirt the whole time, so you got to think about that. Let's consider what it might take a green person to set up, do all of the prep, 2 coats, and break this down. They're going to be cleaning, doing the hardware, maybe it's really dirty. By the time they get to sanding after, setting up, just everything. There's transition times in between tasks. I like to take that into account. Maybe it's a half hour. Sand into the first coat, 15, 20 minutes, second coat, another 15, 20 minutes. Maybe you want to go with 2 hours. That is up to you. No one can do that for you. That is how you run your business, what you value, what you want to deliver. What's it going to cost? A lot of different ways to do this. I think this is the best job costing sheet on earth. This is not my intellectual property. This is Tom Reber's of the Contractor Fights intellectual property. I downloaded it. He will email it to you for free. You just have to sign up for a mailing list. Go to thecontractorfight.com. I'm just going to show you how I use it. We have an employee making $16 an hour. Let's just say it takes 2 hours and you want a 45% profit margin. That's $73 on the labor that you need to bring in total revenue, and materials. Not going to be more than $10 of materials for one door, but as you can see, $91. If you want to make a 45% gross profit margin on this door with this employee taking 2 hours and even $5 worth of materials, you need $80 or $90 of revenue. Some people will do like $84.99. Some people want to do a marketable number like that. If you want some cushion, you think you get it to 100. If you are in a tight market, maybe you're doing 75. Let's go with 75. Save it. I'm going to show you how it looks on the other end. All right, so now we are in a basic bidding template. I categorize that in interior doors and trim, 6-panel commercial door. We have 5 of them, let's say. All right, and we are looking at exactly what I showed. So we can preview what the estimate looks like, and it's clean, right? What the item is, basic description, that's all the client needs to see, price, quantity, done. Easy. Work order. This is internal facing. I suppose you could do your kind of SOPs on that so that each time an employee receives a work order, they receive a reminder of what steps they need to do. A lot of people have that separate. I know that's a personal choice, but just to show you what the 2 different documents look like. Once you do all this work, get everything in there. I got kind of crazy with how I broke everything up, but let's say they're like, hey, we want to do the door frames, just a refresh coat though. There are 5 of them. So door frame, one side of them, 1 coat. Bam. Okay, looks like those are $89 each based on my calculations. And again, what the prep includes. Guess I specified Scuff-X or Emerald on that when I encoded them, but it just gives you really quick estimates. This is really great. Imagine being able to put together a bid like that. That's a pretty big deal to me. Being able to do that, being able to look at your pricing, be able to come over here, use a spreadsheet like this. You can technically do this in Estimate Rocket. I like this better, to be honest. This is what I do. Okay, quick post-production note in case there's any confusion. I do not use Estimate Rocket's hours tracking the estimates, the profitability that you see up there, that's 74%. I do not calibrate that. You can. I choose not to. That's why it looks weird. But imagine how powerful this is, guys. If you haven't started doing this, even if you can't imagine hiring, I strongly encourage you, every time you do a different thing, time how long it takes you. You're going to need to add a little time for any new employee. Think about what you're using for every single thing in terms of inventory, tools, products. Make decisions on products to use. So you're not carrying 5 different kinds of caulk and filler. Choose one and go with it. See if it works for everything. A lot of them do. Start to encode everything. Get it out of your head and get it systematized like this. You can do this in your own kitchen. You can get most of these line items done using your imagination, your experience, and thought experiments with your own house. And the most important thing I can say here is once you start gathering all this data, once you start sending out estimates like this, they're nice, they're neat, we have stock numbers, quantities, everything, you need to make sure these numbers work. If you're still solo, you're just laying the foundation before you get employees, and you're losing your shirt on these numbers you're putting in, the numbers are too low, your process is a little over the top, you might be doing too much, or a combination of the two, but you got to figure that out. If you're not checking and making sure that everything you're inputting works and these numbers are good, you're just going to be scaling up a bad system. So these numbers have to be gold. and you make sure this is a whole comprehensive system that serves the client and serves you. If it doesn't do both, it's never going to work for you. I swear to you, you start to pay attention to this stuff, you will automatically get more efficient. You will notice yourself making more money. You start counting things in profit margin instead of gut, you will start making more money. You will feel better about your work. And it just starts with encoding on the smallest level here. So think about how powerful that is. 10 or 15 minutes a week, 10 or 15 minutes a day, a few times a week, will build you a giant database that will start paying increasing dividends the more you have. This is definitely a business where information is power, and I strongly encourage you to start doing this. If you want to know more about this, if you want just a giant amount of awesome content, Nick Slavik, Ask a Painter, he has a YouTube channel where he hammers this stuff day in and day out. Job costing, estimating, everything. He covers it so well. He's the king of this stuff. This was a different kind of video, but I think this stuff is some of the most important work to be showing. I wanted to show it on a super granular level. I'm so happy to help with any part of this. Please reach out with any questions. Best place to reach me is Advice from a Young Tradesman on Instagram. Please leave comments, likes, and subscriptions and all that stuff. And thanks again. See you next time.